Welcome back. January is typically a quiet time in the gaming space with not a lot of news taking place. There's usually not many releases. Of course, that has changed this year due to the shipping and work from home constraints that were in place last year as well as the year before. So, a lot of larger IPs that would have released at the end of last year are pushed to the beginning of this year. So, we have many games coming out, but that is the least of the news that we actually have because on Tuesday it was announced that Microsoft planned to acquire Activision, one of the oldest and largest developers in the gaming scene. They've been around since the days of the Atari. So it's that's hard to wrap your mind around there in and of itself. Along with this, we want to discuss Konami's NFTs auction and how they were able to come up big with the items that they actually sold, as well as the leaks for Pokemon Legends Arceus because the game is just out there as a whole right now. I saw a post on Instagram where Austin John Plays was able to pick up 4 copies physically, and it's just kind of nuts seeing some of those new forms and everything. I might not be the biggest fan, but we'll discuss some of that as well. First, if you're new here, make sure if you haven't already, you follow us on one of our social platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, we are on YouTube and TikTok. We may expand to other platforms in the future. And let your friends know about us. If you haven't already, rate the podcast on one of the sites that actually allow that, like Apple Podcasts, and we appreciate that as well. First and foremost, let's talk about this massive acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. They paid $68.7 billion. That's billion, billion, not million. This is one of the largest acquisitions, the largest deals in gaming history as a whole. And Microsoft has positioned themselves well to actually benefit from this. They are in a great place to actually outperform Sony this console life cycle. If you look at the best-selling game on the PlayStation 5 at this time, it is Call of Duty Vanguard. A third-party title is the best-selling title on the PlayStation ecosystem. That speaks volume to the amount of leverage that Microsoft just gained here. They're with that being one of the largest titles, and I know many people who pick up Call of Duty every year, year after year, it doesn't matter. They're picking that title up because they're going to play Call of Duty. They want to play Call of Duty. They want to run through the Easter eggs for zombies if that's an option. And they just love the multiplayer as a whole. So they're the diehard fans who every year go out and they spend $60 or I guess now $70 a game to pick this up. So it's interesting that Microsoft has made this huge acquisition, and it definitely puts pressure on Sony. I was watching Review Tech USA, and Rich had stated that, probably what they will do is keep Warzone on all consoles, so you will have all Call of Duty. You'll still be able to play Call of Duty, but you'll still get that money from the microtransactions if you're Microsoft and smart that way. So you're going to make good money that way. And then you can force people into your ecosystem, say, if you want the next AAA experience, the campaign and everything, if there is one, which I have to believe with Microsoft actually taking control over Activision, hopefully we get some more complete games instead of just the multiplayer packs like we got with, I think it was Black Ops 4. But this is interesting nonetheless. It shows us that Microsoft is here to play and they are here to win. Like I said, this is the biggest title that is sold on the PlayStation 5 last year, and it is now a Microsoft-owned IP. And if you look at some of the other IPs in this, it gets kind of bananas because back in the days, Crash Bandicoot was a pseudo mascot for Sony. It was one of the launch titles for the PlayStation 1, and now Crash Bandicoot is owned by Microsoft. So we could see a Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon game that are Microsoft Xbox exclusives, though I bet those would probably go to the Nintendo Switch just because of the relationship that Microsoft seems to have with Nintendo. They don't necessarily view them as a competitor, a direct competitor like Sony, because we have Ori and the Will of the Wisp and Cuphead that both went over to the Nintendo Switch, though Cuphead did eventually make its round to the PS4 and PS5 as well, I believe. The number of IPs, I was looking at some of this here, some of the IPs, and now they would own Call of Duty, they would own Crash Bandicoot, Diablo, DJ Hero, Empire Earth, Guitar Hero, Gun, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, King's Quest, Overwatch, Pitfall, Prototype, Singularity, Skylanders, and Soldiers of Fortune, along with, of course, Spyro the Dragon, StarCraft, Tenchu, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, World of Warcraft being one of the larger ones, and true crime. This is an absolute win for Microsoft through and through. Many of these IPs are just dormant. Activision hasn't done anything with these in years, so hopefully some of those are revived and ported over to the Xbox. And you know what would be, is interesting to me, what would be a tough pill to swallow for Sony? What if Microsoft approached them and they said, okay, we can do Call of Duty on the PlayStation console. We will even release a physical copy of it if you let us run Game Pass off of the PlayStation ecosystem on the PS5. Wouldn't that be something? If they approach them, that would be something to swallow if you're Sony, especially when you're gearing up to try to offer your own streaming service there, your own games as a service option. I would not be surprised to see that happen, since Xbox doesn't seem necessarily focused on the Xbox as a whole, because you have to remember, you don't even have to buy an Xbox to take advantage of this and get access to their first-party titles. You can simply have a gaming PC, though it's much more expensive, or you can game on your phone. I think there was a beta for that, and you got to believe they're going to work that out and use Azure, their cloud platform, to try to promote that even further. So you have to see that Microsoft seems to be looking towards the future, and eventually it's not inconceivable to believe that you might just have a plug into your TV and then you like a dongle like a Roku stick and be able to play Game Pass on your TV. I see it all coming in the future, and it looks like Microsoft is preparing for that consoleless future where they would just own all these IPs and then sell you that subscription monthly. Because the idea is they'll gobble up all these companies, all these smaller developers, and eventually they will start to tick up that price. Kind of like we're seeing with Netflix, where they go up every year like $1 or $2, and everybody's just paying it because everybody's cut the cord at this point for Netflix and everything, and there's so much competition in the streaming industry right now for movies and shows that it's ridiculous. And we will probably move to that point with gaming at some point in the future, where there's not as many providers like Dish Network or Spectrum or DirecTV who are pushing that out. There'll probably just be these companies like Sony pushing out their IPs, their software sales. And if you look at Microsoft, they are very good at software sales. Their main income source is software as a service. That is the Microsoft suite of things, including Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. They sell that. I myself am subscribed to that for a year, $70 a year. They just get out of me because I need access to Excel, Word. Maybe if I need to write up a script or budget something, I use Excel for that. So they are the king of selling you software, and what they're doing now is they're acquiring all these companies that have these IPs so they could lease that software to you month over month and make money. The same thing they did with Bethesda, but on a much smaller scale. I mean, the acquisition of Bethesda was $7.5 million. This is $68.7. That's an astronomical number. It is almost 10 times the amount they paid for Bethesda, and we thought the amount they paid for Bethesda was crazy. It just goes to show you that they are here to play, and not only play, they are here to win. They haven't had a W in the console cycle in a while, but I see it coming this time around, especially when they can pretty much stifle off Sony, many of those third-party titles that you would see there. I don't know if From Software owns the IP of Sekiro, but I have to imagine that if they were going to publish another one, they would have to have Activision, actually Microsoft's consent at this point, and that might be a Microsoft exclusive. It's looking more and more to me, especially with just the acquisition of Bethesda, that I'm going to have to either gear up to get Game Pass on a PC or purchase these titles there, or I'm going to have to get an Xbox. Because I really don't want to miss out on Starfield, the next Elder Scrolls, or Fallout. Those are fun games that I've sunk lifetimes into, it seems like. But Microsoft doing this was just a very wise move, and kudos to them. And Phil Spencer actually did a interview with Eurogamer stating, it wasn't their goal to break up communities or anything like that, but you better believe a lot of these IPs are going to become Xbox exclusives. Thank God that I own a Switch as well, so hopefully some of these titles will be ported over to there. I know some of the heftier ones like Starfield definitely will not be, Sekiro isn't even over there, but we're going to have to see at this point if Microsoft makes an effort to port some of these older titles over to the Nintendo Switch, because that is a quick way to try to recoup some of that money. If you could port Sekiro over to the Nintendo Switch, have a whole new audience there who might not have experienced it on the PS4 and the Xbox. That being said, I hate it for Sony. I really love playing in the Sony ecosystem, but I'm going to have to do what I'm going to have to do to play some of these premier titles that I actually love so much. I'm not beholden to Sony in any way, shape, or form. They have done some things in the past that I haven't exactly set right with me, but they've done some things right as well, and I feel like they've done more right than wrong and released a lot of these IPs that I've come to love. I love the God of Wars. I love the Horizon Zero Dawn. I love the Sackboys. I love the Little Big Planet, the Ratchet and Clanks, the Sly Cooper. All of these titles are some that I love, and I will probably pick up a PS5 before I get an Xbox, whenever that does happen. Me being broke as I am right now, it's probably going to be a little while, but I will eventually get a PS5 when there are some console exclusives on there that make it worth picking up, because at this time, like I said in the past, you really only have Returnal, Demon's Souls, and Deathloop at this time as the main draws, in my opinion. That will likely change in the future, but with Microsoft acquiring Activision, they're definitely putting the squeeze on Sony, and it's like they're gobbling up everything around all third-party studios until, they have a stranglehold on the industry. They almost have a monopoly at this point. They own some of the largest IPs out there, some of the larger studios. It's an interesting time, and I can't say it's a bad business move if you're Microsoft, because you bolster your own IPs. They've become first-party IPs at that point, and you strangle your competitor of their best-selling game of last year. Likely we won't see the support end for that game, but the next AAA title, you better believe you're going to have to buy a Microsoft box or a PC to play that. This is just something that is completely wild to me, but I guess this is the time that we live in at this point. Moving right on from that, we look at the Konami auction that took place. It was over the course of this past weekend, and they sold, I think it was 20-something NFTs. Actually, I'm sorry, there were only 14 NFTs. And they were able to make $162,000 off of that. OpenSea, the marketplace where they were sold, took their own cut, but that left Konami with $157,000. Now, these are the Memorial NFT collection. They're more classic. And the most expensive one sold for, $26,732? And was basically Dracula's castle pixel art. If you're wondering why more and more companies seem to be getting in NFTs and more of your favorite development teams or game companies are getting into it, this is your answer. Konami dug $157,000 out of nothing, out of artwork that already existed. They probably sourced somebody to create these on the blockchain, create the certificate and everything. But at the end of the day, there was minimal work that went into this. Not to mention the environmental impact of actually having that Ethereum transaction is ridiculous. It's irresponsible, and it's a cash grab, in my opinion. I'm not the only one that thinks this. It seems like as a whole, the gaming community is just providing such backlash against NFTs. Nobody seems to want them but the larger developers and the current holders of NFTs, which are a small percentage of actually the world population. There are not many people that own these things. And if we go into the meta future that is Facebook's vision, then maybe they'll have some intrinsic value there within the metaverse. But who's to say that that doesn't fade away eventually? And at that point, what do you have? You have a JPEG. And there's all kind of other stuff going on. I mean, we had the etiquette NFTs that were non-sanctioned by people just trying to get money. We had Nintendo Live did a video yesterday where they stated that their logo for their YouTube channel and everything was being sold as an NFT as well without their permission. So it's rampant piracy and IP theft. It seems to be going on with this. And then we have people like Konami and EA and Square who are just pushing for it to try to get that money while the market is hot. I saw some goats here yesterday trying to imitate what the chimps did, and just the comment section on Twitter was full of people just taking that JPEG and say, hey, I own it. So I'm not alone in this. I'm not the vocal minority. It seems the vocal minority are the people who actually want these things. I do not understand it. I don't understand why you would pay $26K for a JPEG image. Granted, it's a certificate of authenticity and everything, but it's all more than a little bit ridiculous to me. But when companies like Konami are making the profits they are off of these, it encourages developers like Square, who would undoubtedly take their stab at this and try to make some money off this as well. And the fun fact, PC Gamer actually pointed out that the anniversary of Castlevania was actually last year. It was the 35th anniversary was last year, but they did this year. I guess that's because NFTs are just coming about and they're like, oh, whoa, we can get in on that. We'll just say it's the 35th anniversary. It's actually the 36th anniversary, guys. I need you to get your facts straight there instead of just trying to get out here and make it seem like it's a big thing. It's like, oh, it's the 35th anniversary. Be in on this one-time auction for these NFTs and let's pad our pockets with all this, because Konami is a shell of their former self. They're focused on the pachinko machines at this time, especially so when you see them diving into NFTs and just selling 14 of them for 162 Gs. It's despicable. And I can't wait until this passes. And I hope it does pass rather soon. I'm getting sick of seeing it. NFTs are the new coin bros on social media. They're out here trying to... You'll see videos of people talking about, like, I invested in Ethereum, saved up that money, I bought some NFTs, make this much a month off of it. There's no end to those videos and people trying to reach out, trying to get you to invest in these. And nobody wants it. Or, I'm sorry, a vocal minority actually want it. The rest of us couldn't care less and want you to get that stuff out of our face. How about you make a game that is playable and doesn't take you 10 years to make, and don't make us pay for you trying to make even more money? We appreciate that. End rant on the NFTs. Next, I had seen a few leaks for Pokemon Legends Arceus. I actually saw Austin John Plays post on Instagram that he had picked up like 4 copies. He showed a picture of 4 copies of that. So much for anybody else who was trying to get ahead, do a review or anything like that. He's going to have all the trending videos for that at this time because he's going to be fully prepared. Because the time that it rolls around next Friday, he will likely have completed the game and have multiple guides out, which is good for him and his revenue source. But anybody else who works a 9 to 5 or is unable to get an early copy, you're at an increased disadvantage there. Not to mention he has a much larger audience than most people. But I looked at some of the leaks for the Hisuian forms of the Pokemon that are actually out there. And it is kind of wild. The Pokemon that they show, some of them, the designs are questionable in my opinion. Especially so the forms of the, spoiler alert ahead everyone, especially so the evolutions of the starters you start with. For Samurott, it just looks like they put a coat of black paint over it. They were particularly lazy with that. Typhlosion looks like he's kind of emo or he's down. And I don't know what the heck is going on with Decadui. Decadui is now a grassing fighting type, but it looks more like one of the enemies in Sekiro, like one of the samurais there, who had the hats on, like the weird looking hats, the flat hats they have on. He looks kind of wild there. So we got a peek at all these, and of course they have Hisuian forms of Dialga and Palkia as well. They look more like centaurs than anything else. They have more horses and don't really have arms sticking out like they do in the current games. So they're 4-legged and just stick their head sticking out of the top of the horse body, it looks like. I'm Some of these are wild to me. The Hisuian Arcanine looks the coolest out of all of them. They did a good job on that, with it being a fire and rock type. It having looking like a stone statue and everything. It is probably the coolest by far. And they also have a Hisuian Sliggoo and Goodra as well. They look, they're okay. Steel and dragon types at this point, which I think we only previously had with Dialga. So I'm looking forward to the game. I haven't seen any gameplay out there. I'm pretty sure that if there's anything put out prior to the official release date, Nintendo is going to strike that down and prevent it from getting out there. So if your channel isn't worth it to you, you might be posting that. But I know a lot of people who are just going to avoid doing so until the day of release. And then again, they could be hit with a strike like RGT85 was at that point, because Metroid Dread on his channel, he waited to do his review until the day that it was actually embargoes were lifted. He had done the review prior, but he didn't post it up until that day. But Nintendo was not happy about having an early copy of that game because they didn't send him one, and they tried to have the video struck with YouTube. And it was just an interesting time nonetheless, and I think we're going to see more of that with this. It remains to be seen what links they'll actually go to for this and how they'll actually approach it, if they even bother with it. But it seems like this one, Dread leaked early and there were copies out there, but this is just a whole nother level. When multiple people have seen it out there, the game's data has been dumped online and people have gone through the code already to see what new forms and everything, and then we have complete pictures of every form, because that's what I saw on Instagram, and I saw them and I wasn't too thrilled with most of them. There were a couple of cool ones, but for the most part I was thinking, man, where are they going with these designs? They just seem to get worse and worse over the years. They have a couple of hits here and there, but for the most part, man, we're working backwards, man. They're getting worse. That is just my opinion on the matter. You may think some of these are the best out there. I will still pick up the game and play through it because I'm a Pokemon fan. And even though I don't like a lot of the forms, I want to see the evolution line and where we're going with the next titles outside the mainline titles, or even with the mainline titles. I like to see how they're innovating and making it fresh for a new audience. Overall, this game is out there already. If I had the money to, I would probably be going to my local Walmart, seeing if I could get lucky and pick up a copy. But I'm flat broke at this moment, waiting for payday. And I plan to try to pick it up. And on Friday when I get paid, I'll likely try to go by Walmart and see if I can get lucky. If Nintendo hasn't contacted these larger retailers at that point, big box stores, and told them, hey, you guys need to make sure you're pulling them back. Don't sell early. But fingers crossed I can get lucky. I am definitely going to try. But if you want to avoid spoilers, I would definitely avoid any social media platforms at this time. I mean, you got a whole week and a day to go to avoid that. So best of luck to you. I don't really care about spoilers, but I know some people are very intent on experiencing it for the first time themselves and not seeing anything on the internet as a whole. I don't care. I can see it on the internet. It doesn't ruin my experience. It doesn't diminish it one iota for me. Overall, I think it'll be a fun game. It's just some of the design choices on the Pokemon are kind of wild. But that's just my opinion. Like everything else that I put out here. My opinion is not the law. You don't have to think the same way I do. We're all entitled to our own opinion, and our differing opinions are what make this world so great. What you might like might not be what I like, but maybe you can turn me on to something that I didn't necessarily like before. That's why I try to keep an open mind about things in these games. Even though I think that some of the sprites and character models for these Pokemon look just wild, the designs overall, I'll still check it out. Kind of torn on what starter I go with at this point. The main line Typhlosion, the Typhlosion line's final evolution, it's not going to do it for me. I was going to go with the Decadui line, and I probably still will. And I've never played the game with Samurott in it. I contemplated that, but I'll probably still go with the Decadui. But what do you think? Are you going to plan to pick up Legends Arceus? Is Microsoft working on a monopoly in the gaming space, uncontested? Does Sony actually have a chance this console life cycle? And are you planning to pick up any NFTs? Let us know the question of these and anything else you might have. Reach out to us if you have any suggestions on how we might improve the podcast overall and make it a better listening experience for you guys. Because at the end of the day, we put this out there for you. We want to make sure that you are enjoying the content that we put out there. As always, I appreciate you guys listening.